Hey everyone, how's it going? Chris and Andrew here. At West Village, we are in the middle of a teaching series called Collision of Kingdoms. And in this series, what we're doing is just talking about how the gospel and politics, or the church and the political arena, intersect with one another. As a part of that series, we've been taking in questions from people who have been listening in, and then just taking some time to answer them. And so today's question is this. It's a doozy, okay? So buckle up. Here's the question. What is the healthy Christian response to LGBTQ plus rights? Should we support them or should we fight against them?
Yeah, I mean, it's a doozy of a question in our culture. Yeah,
I gotta go to the bathroom. I'll be back in a few minutes.
So I think there's a couple of things to understand. How we understand even rights and freedoms is really based on a worldview. And so when we talk about rights from, say, a liberal kind of perspective, we would say like there are things that every human as an individual should experience. Now, at the same time, there is an increasing progressive worldview that is based off of postmodernity that has some assumptions that are actually filtering in even how they would understand what those rights are. That would be different. So, for example, I would say, like, man, every person should be like treated with dignity and respect, and I can 100% get behind that. But there's going to be some people that we disagree with their lifestyle. Well, a liberal kind of perspective, and this is kind of speaking in political terms, but a liberal perspective would say, you know, we live in a society where people should be able to say, yes, I disagree with you, or I disagree with the choices that you are making, but that doesn't mean I'm against you or I hate you. Whereas this kind of underlying progressive view actually holds to the assumption that if you don't agree with me, if you are part of a dominant part of the culture, say you're heterosexual or you're guy versus a woman, or you're any of those things, that in and of itself means that you are naturally going to be against me, and you're part of a society that's increasingly perpetuating bias and bigotry towards me. So the first thing I'd say is, as Christians, we hold to what I call a biblical worldview, and a biblical worldview says that everyone is made in the image of God. It also helps us understand that, like, there is truth, there is a reality that is out there, and so your feelings, your perspective isn't the thing that actually defines what reality is. And so that's super important to start with that point. So with that being said, which I know that's a huge kind of disclaimer, but I'd say number one, Christians should be known for the way that we love and care for all people, no matter their gender, no matter their sexuality, no matter their their perspective. And I would hope that any person at any time could come into a West Village gathering when we get to gather again, and they would know, no matter what their background is, that there are people who are going to treat them with dignity and respect. At the same time, we recognize that that certain actions have consequences. And so, for example, when we talk about like back in the day, people who were gay and lesbian were locked in prison or put into mental health institutions, or went through very horrible conversion therapy experiences. I think we as Christians need to own that and say that was not good, that was not right, that was not God honoring. We should fight against any, even if there's any kind of sense that that's coming up in our own kind of Christian communities, that we should stomp that down and say that's not right. At the same time, we recognize that biblically we're called, the family is created by God for a particular purpose, and that particular purpose was designed by God to be best fulfilled. I would say not even best fulfilled, but the way that's designed is to have a mother and a father bringing life into the world and caring for their kids. And I think when we don't, at least at some, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure exactly how this works itself out in the political sphere, but when we don't take a stand and say this is actually the way that God designed things, we're going to see some consequences in how that plays out in our culture. And then we come to the issue of gender dysphoria or transgenderism. I mean, this is like a huge top button issue in our culture. And it's so interesting because the reality is the amount of people who this actually directly affects, who are going through this process is minuscule. I have a friend who's a med student and is actually working with this community. And he told me in BC, you're looking at, people who actually go through gender reassignment surgery, 10 people a year in BC, 5 million people in BC, very small part of the population, but it gets so much face time right now. And so I would say that this is, again, a really complex issue. My own thought, and I will give this as my own thought from just my own process of thinking through this, praying through this, is that this is an issue where the church has to kind of tread lightly with a great deal of compassion. At the same time, I think it's probably very dangerous for our culture to promote this and celebrate this as normative. And so I think as Christians, like, we have to be, again, like ambassadors of the truth. Because here's the reality is that, you know, when you're teaching people, like say in a school setting, it's impressionable that this is normal, it might actually cause someone who isn't even, you know, kind of not designed, but like doesn't have a proclivity to go in this direction to start think about it and start to place certain expectations upon themselves. And that can be psychologically very damaging. And I think we're actually seeing that in the, you know, rise in depression, rise in mental health issues and anxiety. And so I think there are huge dramatic consequences to going in this direction that we as Christians need to continue to like look at how we can influence the political sphere to bring that kind of truth to bear on our culture.
Yeah, C.S. Lewis had this thought, and I'm not sure where he wrote it, but he had this concept that he called man in the machine. Mm-hmm. That if you can imagine that humanity, you know, the world, society, culture, the way it operates, it's like a machine. If that machine was built by someone, then there's a way that that machine works best in order to maximize its effectiveness. And he uses that sort of by way of analogy to describe that there is a way that the world works best because it operates much like a machine. And God is the one who designed the world. And if he's the one who designed the world and there's a way that the world operates best, then what we need to do is we need to lean heavily on what he says, what he prescribes for how we are to live. And so that would be probably where it's where the largest difference is between the divide really between the way that the Christian thinks and the way that the current secular culture thinks, is that our ideas, our philosophies, the way we understand gender, identity, marriage, sexuality, all of these things are rooted in Scripture, and culture. It's really not rooted in anything. Yeah. It gets tossed to and fro, you know, with the wind and wave of the moment. And so that's kind of where we find ourselves. And so as followers of Jesus, like, our heart is not to, we don't want to hurt people. We don't want to discriminate against people. We don't want to injure people. We actually want the best for the world. And so we want to proclaim in a way that honors people and in a way that people feel valued and loved and respected, even if they don't agree with us, that there is a way that God designed them to be that works best. I remember reading once in an article by, it was in the Christianity Today, it was written by a pastor from Duncan on Vancouver Island, just up island from where we are, and pastor in a church, and he was describing this issue, and he said, and I think this applies probably broadly to just about any issue, he says, as Christians, we want to hold to the truth, but we want to do it in such a way that our truth is so soaked with grace that it's hard to reject. You know, like, people are like, they're astonished by the fact that we differ in our beliefs, but we love so well. Like, how could that possibly be? But that our grace is also so seeped or so soaked in the truth that while they're experiencing the tenderness of Jesus through the community of faith, there's this component of truth that they really have to grapple with and wrestle with and say, okay, I love you, I love what you're about, but what you're saying here is actually making it hard for me to receive your grace. And I think there's like a tension there. And as the people of God, that's kind of where we have to live.
Yeah, I think what you want is for someone to have, you know, this like preconceived notion of like what someone who would hold a biblical worldview is like, and them not to be able to reconcile that in their head with the experience of the way that you love them, because they're like, this person doesn't hate me, they're for me, they love me, they care about me, they want what's best for me, and they've poured out their life for me. So it actually causes them to wonder, oh, maybe there's something to this. It's not just like some bigoted position or some hatred.
Backwoods Christian.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, absolutely.